The era of mobile ports is dying. Because why wait years for your favorite Steam games to get a native port when you can just play them on Android right now? Yeah, this actually works, and it's being officially funded by Valve. Kind of. Here's what's going on. Running Steam games on mobile, or any Windows game for that matter, has only recently started hitting the mainstream, and what makes it possible is a combination of two different technologies working together, with the most important one being the CPU translation layer FEX. To put it simply, PC games are built for x86 processors, mobile phones have ARM processors, they don't understand what the hell the other side is talking about because they speak completely different instruction languages. To fix this, FEX goes in between x86 and ARM like Google Translate and makes sure both sides understand each other. Of course, it's not that simple, but I'm not gonna waste your time as I don't know much anyways. And FEX isn't something that just recently sprung to life. It started development all the way back in 2016 when Valve began recruiting and funding open source developers to bring Windows games to ARM chips. The reason they did this is because, according to Pierre-Luc Griffet, who's one of the architects behind SteamOS and the Steam Deck, in 2016 to 2017 there was always an idea that they would end up wanting to do that, and that's when the FEX compatibility layer was started, because they knew there was close to a decade of work needed before it would be robust enough people could rely on it for their libraries. They're pretty excited to be able to expand PC gaming to include all those options instead of being arbitrarily restricted to a subset of the market. Plus, game developers wasting their time on porting games is the last thing Valve wants, with Pierre-Luc Griffet stating that they would much rather have those developers invest their time and energy into making their games better, or working on their next game. Valve themselves have already found a use for FEX since their upcoming VR headset, the Steam Frame, is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is an ARM processor. Essentially, the Steam Frame is a Trojan horse that contains the necessary tech to run Windows games on ARM, paving the way for a Steam on ARM future. By the way, all of this info was sourced from an interview by The Verge. Links in the description, it's a fascinating read. The second technology used to run Windows games on ARM is Proton. Proton is what the Steam Deck uses to run Windows games, and in short it translates Windows commands into ones that Linux can understand, and by extension the Steam Deck's operating system, SteamOS. The reason we still need Proton even though we're on Android is because Android only uses the Linux kernel, not the full Linux environment that PC games expect. But instead of setting up a full Linux system, what we need to do to natively run Windows games is create a small Windows style container with Wine and Proton and whatever, and then use FEX to handle the CPU translation. These two technologies allow any sufficiently powerful ARM device to run Windows games, whether it's the Steam Frame, your phone, or a now booming sector of the handheld market, Android handhelds. AYN is one of the major players here with handhelds like the 4 and Odin, both of which can already run many games impressively well, like here's Dark Souls Remastered on the Odin 3 or Skyrim on the 4. Android handhelds doing well is also good for smartphone gaming as it increases the amount of people interested in playing Steam games on Android devices, creating more demand for this tech to keep improving, so it's a very nice win-win situation overall. Anyway though, how do you actually start playing Steam games on mobile? This is GameHub, an app by the controller manufacturer GameSir that allows you to easily download Steam games and import non-Steam ones to play them on any powerful Android device. It's one of the best options for playing Steam games on mobile. It's very easy to set up and runs very well. The one problem though is privacy, as the app asks for a lot of seemingly unnecessary permissions. GameHub Lite aims to solve this, being a privacy-focused fork of the original GameHub, but with worse performance as it's behind on updates that GameHub has. Technically, GameHub Lite can have better performance since it's stripped out of all the random nonsense of the original, but honestly I see mixed opinions on this, so keep that in mind. The other option is GameNative, and while it's open source and doesn't step on your privacy, it's harder to use. And same story with the last option, Winlator. Apparently Winlator may have the best performance out of all of these options, but once again it's hard to use, and this video isn't supposed to be a technical tutorial, so I'll stick with GameHub here just because I know it works, and it's also kind of like an entry point into the PC emulation space. Maybe one day I'll make a complete guide, so go subscribe so you don't miss it. But back to GameHub. To use it, all you have to do is log into Steam, install a game from your library, change a few settings, which doesn't take long and it's always the same process, but I won't be getting into it right now. Then just launch the game and see if it works. Two things can happen here. Either the game works or it doesn't. If you got the bad ending, you're gonna need to fiddle around with the settings a little bit, but there's always a chance a certain game will not work no matter what, so you have to be wary of that. If you got the good ending though, it's time to talk about performance. My phone has a Snapdragon 8S Gen 3 and 16GB of RAM. Very solid, but not enough to experience a lot of what GameHub has to offer. While a game like Cuphead runs pretty much flawlessly on max resolution, and a game like Ori and the Blind Forest generally stays around 55 FPS, one of the most demanding games I've tested so far was Mortal Kombat 11, which no matter how low my graphics settings were, never ran above like 15 FPS. The most visually impressive game that I've got to work so far is Tomb Raider 2013, and even that is not a perfect 60 FPS, but usually somewhere around 45 to 55 on medium graphics. It feels fine and is very much playable. So while I can't experience the full potential of Steam games on mobile, others can, and damn, there's a lot to unpack. The situation is basically this: the REDMAGIC 11 Pro is currently the most powerful phone out there. It's got a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor and up to 24GB of RAM, and with this setup you can play GTA 5 at up to 60 FPS, The Witcher 3 on low graphics at up to 60, Skyrim at up to 60, God of War at 30, the list goes on. In short, the potential of the right device is genuinely huge already, and all of this tech is still actively in development, so things are only getting better and better. And that statement definitely aged well, because while editing this video, alpha turnip drivers came out for Adreno 800 series GPUs, which are used by the 8 Elite Gen 5 for example, and turnip drivers are basically open source Vulkan GPU drivers for Snapdragon chips, and with them you can now run Spider-Man Remastered and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart at like 30 FPS, both of which are PS5 games. It's probably fair to say that once the drivers mature, you'll be able to lock in a solid 30 FPS on these and other similar games. But is any of this at all practical? Well, it can be. I've been slowly chipping away at Tomb Raider 2013, which I said runs fine. I've played through SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2 and that worked literally flawlessly, and I've played through What the Golf 2, but in this case there were issues. In the main sort of hub, for example, I was never able to reach 60 FPS when the game is not demanding in the slightest, and the Apple Arcade version that it has runs perfectly on the iPhone 8, which is obviously a hugely weaker device, so there's really no consistency. Whether a game actually works well or not is all just a goddamn coin flip. Plus, firmware throttling can be a big issue, as performance can take a massive dip if your phone starts overheating. Because of this, I personally bought a GameSir X3 Pro controller, since it has a fan, so that's pretty cool. GameSir, I swear to god, I just sucked you off big time, hit me up. REDMAGIC 2. And one more thing. Battery drain. I know, massive surprise, but for long gaming sessions you better hope your phone has a lot of battery capacity, cause the more demanding games can tear through it fast. I'd imagine the use case for GameHub for most people is gonna be indies and well optimized or older AAAs, and for that, it can already work great. Once again, you need to keep your expectations realistic, but there definitely is fun to be had. Also somewhat related, but being able to play Steam games on Android results in another super unique benefit that I don't think gets talked about enough: access to the mobile Steam store in a way where you take advantage of your purchases on the same device. Okay, you may be thinking to yourself, no shit, little bro, but hear me out. The Play Store, App Store, Epic Games Store, and pretty much every single mobile app store, they all f***ing suck. They all have literally zero discoverability. The only way you'll ever find out about certain games being available is if you do very specific research, or you find out through word of mouth. For example, did you know that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Subnautica, Ultimate Chicken Horse, and Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic are on the Play Store? Chances are hell no, because how the hell are you supposed to find that out? And everything that's promoted on the main For You page? Slop. Genuine slop. Sponsored bullshit out the ass. How the f*** is Timo in the Games tab? On the other hand, on Steam, obviously none of these issues are present. The user experience is like a million times better, and kind of makes me wonder how the hell did society accept this without asking questions. Genuinely baffling. But whatever, at least the mobile Steam store now being useful for not just buying games to play on PC later, but just straight up on mobile is super cool, and it's kind of a workaround to this App Store problem. Albeit you have to deal with all the potential issues like games straight up not running, but you kinda have to take what you can get at this point. So even if very rough around the edges, Windows games can work on Android, making mobile gaming seem just a little less worthless and bringing more value to Android handhelds like the AY and Odin. And with somewhat frequent Facts updates, GameHub updates, new drivers, and etc., the future of mobile is looking better than ever before. Unfortunately, the next step of this revolution probably won't be a phone with SteamOS, because Pierre-Luc Griffet said, "I don't know if that's going to be a big focus for us to develop local content or try to develop SteamOS for devices like that. I mean, I'm not discounting any possibility, but I think with just living room, handheld, and desktop, trying to have a good outcome for gaming applications and everything else you'd want to do in a desktop, we have a ton of work to do." So I suppose in this case, only time will tell. Anyways though, if you're maybe looking at squeezing as much gaming potential out of your phone as possible, then we have this pretty dope forum on our Discord server where we share things that could be useful for ya. Also check out this video. It may or may not be related, I don't know. Also leave a like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.